Have you ever jolted awake in the middle of the night, your heart racing, after seeing the face of a departed loved one in your dreams? That lingering sensation that stays with you, the unmistakable feeling that their presence was more than just a figment of your imagination, is not to be dismissed lightly. Padre Pio, that profound mystic whose spiritual insights have guided countless souls, revealed a startling truth. When the deceased appear in our dreams, especially with sorrowful eyes or in silence, they are not simply memories resurfacing in our subconscious. They are souls reaching out from purgatory, desperately seeking the one thing that can ease their suffering and hasten their journey to eternal peace: your prayers. This is not superstition or idle speculation. It is a spiritual reality that has been witnessed by thousands who have experienced the transformative power of heeding these nocturnal calls for help. The veil between our world and the next is thinner than most people realize, and in the quiet vulnerability of sleep, souls in purgatory find a channel through which they can communicate their urgent needs. Padre Pio, who was blessed with extraordinary spiritual gifts, including bilocation, stigmata, and the ability to read hearts, often counseled his spiritual children about these dream visitations. The souls of the departed, he would say with unwavering certainty, are permitted by God to seek assistance from those they loved in life. Your recurring dreams of that grandfather who raised you, the friend who left this world too soon, or the parent whose absence still creates an aching void, these are not random neural firings or simple manifestations of grief. They are sacred invitations to participate in an act of spiritual mercy that transcends the boundaries of death itself. Through your prayers, you hold the key to unlocking their freedom from suffering. The consequences of ignoring these spiritual SOS signals can be profound, not just for the soul reaching out to you, but for your own spiritual journey as well. Padre Pio warned that turning a deaf ear to these pleas creates a spiritual debt that compounds over time. When a soul appears to you in dreams, standing silently at the foot of your bed, gazing at you with eyes that seem to penetrate your very soul, or perhaps revisiting scenes from their earthly life but with a palpable sense of incompletion, they are showing you that their purification is unfinished. They cannot advance toward the divine light without your intercession. Think about that for a moment. Your prayers have the power to literally change the spiritual condition of someone beyond the grave. In the divine economy of salvation, you have been entrusted with a responsibility that few fully understand, but that carries enormous spiritual significance. By the end of this narrative, you will not only recognize these signs, but will possess the spiritual tools to respond to them with confidence and faith. The first unmistakable sign that a soul is reaching out to you from purgatory comes through the emotional atmosphere of the dream itself. You might notice that despite seeing your loved one, there's a heaviness that permeates the encounter, a sadness that seems to emanate not from you, but from them. Padre Pio explained that souls in purgatory carry the weight of their unfinished spiritual business, and this manifests in dreams as a palpable melancholy. Unlike ordinary dreams where emotions fluctuate wildly, these visitations maintain a consistent emotional tone throughout. Your departed mother might appear exactly as you remember her, but something in her demeanor is markedly different, her usual warmth replaced by a solemn gravity, her customary laughter absent. Perhaps she stands at a distance, looking at you with an intensity that communicates without words. This emotional signature is distinctive and profound, leaving you with a lingering sense of uneasiness upon waking, a spiritual fingerprint that Padre Pio taught his followers to recognize as authentic communication from beyond. The second sign manifests in the repetitive nature of these dreams. They return again and again, sometimes with the same scenario playing out, other times with slight variations, but always featuring the same departed soul. Padre Pio observed that ordinary dreams rarely repeat with such persistence unless they carry spiritual significance. If you've dreamed of your departed father 3 times in a single month, each time seeing him standing silently in the house he once loved, or perhaps seated in his favorite chair but unable to speak to you, this is not coincidence but communication. The soul in purgatory, limited in its means of reaching the living, must use repetition to emphasize the urgency of its need. Think of it as a spiritual telephone that keeps ringing until you finally answer the call. Many of Padre Pio's spiritual children reported such recurring dreams, only to find that when they responded with the appropriate prayers and masses, the repetitive dreams ceased, replaced by either peaceful dreams of the same person or no dreams of them at all, a clear sign that the soul's request had been fulfilled. The third and perhaps most compelling sign comes through the specific actions or lack thereof within the dream itself. Souls in purgatory often appear frozen in a state of passive waiting. They may reach out to you without completing the gesture, attempt to speak without producing sound, or simply stand and stare with an unnerving fixity. Padre Pio explained that this frustrating inability to fully communicate symbolizes the soul's state of spiritual suspension, neither in hell nor in heaven, but in a state of purification that limits their spiritual capabilities. You might dream of your grandmother trying to tell you something important, her lips moving but no words emerging, her expression growing increasingly desperate as she realizes you cannot hear her message. Or perhaps your deceased friend continually appears at the threshold of a door, unable to either fully enter the room or retreat from it, symbolizing their liminal spiritual state. This peculiar limitation of movement or communication is not random, but deeply symbolic of their spiritual condition and their need for your intercessory prayers to break through the barriers that bind them. When you recognize that a soul is reaching out to you through dreams, your response carries enormous spiritual weight. Padre Pio was emphatic about what not to do in these situations. Do not dismiss the dream as meaningless. Do not share it as casual conversation fodder. And above all, do not promise prayers that you then neglect to say. The mystic saint explained that acknowledging a soul's plea creates a spiritual covenant that, if broken, can extend their suffering. Imagine for a moment the desperation of these souls. Having passed beyond the veil, they now see with perfect clarity the consequences of their earthly actions and omissions. They understand the purification needed before they can enter the fullness of God's presence, yet they cannot accomplish this purification alone. When they reach out to you specifically, it is because God has permitted them to seek your help in particular. Perhaps it is because of the bonds of love that connected you in life, or perhaps because your prayers carry special efficacy for their unique situation. Whatever the divine reasoning, the responsibility has been placed upon your shoulders, and Padre Pio cautioned that this sacred trust should never be taken lightly. The power to assist these souls has been placed directly in your hands through specific devotional practices that Padre Pio consistently recommended. Chief among these is the rosary, which the saint described as the weapon for our times. When prayed specifically for a soul who has appeared in your dreams, the rosary forms a spiritual lifeline that strengthens that soul during its purification. Padre Pio instructed that when praying for the departed, one should add after each mystery, "Eternal rest grant unto them, O Lord, and let perpetual light shine upon them. May they rest in peace." This simple addition transforms the already powerful rosary into a focused beam of intercessory prayer. Beyond the rosary, Padre Pio strongly advocated for having masses said for the departed soul, the holy sacrifice of the Mass being the most powerful prayer the Church can offer. He often told the story of a soul who appeared to him, saying that a single Mass had accomplished more for its purification than all the prayers its family had offered over many years. This isn't to discount the value of personal prayers, but rather to emphasize the extraordinary spiritual efficacy of the Mass for souls in purgatory. Before continuing with these profound teachings that have transformed countless lives, I must ask you to take a moment for serious reflection. If you believe that these messages from Padre Pio about souls in purgatory can bring peace to both you and your departed loved ones, please write in the comments. I am ready to help these souls find eternal peace. Your commitment matters not just for your own spiritual journey, but potentially for the eternal rest of someone who once walked this earth alongside you. Padre Pio taught that our willingness to acknowledge this responsibility is itself a spiritual act that opens channels of grace. When you publicly affirm your readiness to help, you are not only declaring your intentions to the community of believers, but you are making a spiritual declaration that resonates beyond the physical world. Souls who have been waiting for your prayers can sense this commitment, and the very angels rejoice at your willingness to participate in this work of mercy. Subscribe to our channel to receive more of these life-changing spiritual insights that have guided believers for generations. Now, let us continue with Padre Pio's revolutionary teachings about how to properly respond to these dream visitations. The most powerful weapon in your spiritual arsenal for helping souls in purgatory, according to Padre Pio, is surprisingly accessible to everyone. It is the humble prayer of the heart, offered consistently and with sincere faith. When a departed loved one appears in your dreams, Padre Pio recommended establishing a daily prayer routine specifically for them, ideally at dawn or dusk, times when the veil between worlds grows thinner. Prayer, he would often say, is the oxygen of the soul, and this is doubly true for souls in purgatory who thirst for the refreshing waters of intercessory prayer. The specific prayers matter less than the consistency and intentionality behind them. A simple daily offering like, "O Lord, I offer this day's merits, sacrifices, and prayers for the soul of name," can create a continuous stream of spiritual assistance. Padre Pio explained that this consistency establishes what he called a spiritual lifeline, a conduit of grace that flows from your faithful intercession directly to the soul in need. Many of his spiritual children reported that after establishing such a prayer routine, they would eventually dream of the same departed person, but transformed, smiling, speaking freely, surrounded by light, or explicitly thanking them for their prayers, a confirmation that their spiritual work was bearing fruit. Water blessed by a priest, holy water, serves as a powerful sacramental in aiding souls in purgatory, a fact that Padre Pio emphasized repeatedly in his spiritual counseling. He instructed the faithful to keep holy water in their homes and to sprinkle it while praying for souls who had appeared in their dreams. The demons flee from holy water, he would say, and the souls in purgatory find refreshment in it. This simple act creates what Padre Pio described as a spiritual oasis for the suffering soul, a momentary relief from the purifying fires of purgatory. Similarly, the brown scapular of Our Lady of Mount Carmel, which Padre Pio himself wore faithfully, serves as a spiritual shield when used in conjunction with prayers for the dead. The saint advised those who experience dream visitations to touch their scapular while praying for the departed soul, creating a powerful connection between the living intercessor, the soul in need, and the Blessed Mother's protective mantle. These tangible sacramentals bridge the gap between the physical and spiritual realms, making your prayers not just heard, but amplified in their spiritual efficacy. Perhaps most surprising in Padre Pio's teachings about helping souls who appear in dreams is his insistence on the power of offering personal sacrifices for their benefit. Every voluntary renunciation on earth, he taught, becomes a liberation for a soul in purgatory. This doesn't necessarily mean extreme asceticism, but rather the mindful offering of daily inconveniences, discomforts, and challenges for the specific intention of helping the soul who has appeared to you. When you skip that dessert you crave, endure a difficult conversation with patience, or resist the urge to complain about life's irritations, and consciously offer these small sacrifices for a particular soul, you are participating in what Padre Pio called the divine economy of salvation. He often told the story of a woman who had recurring dreams of her deceased husband standing before a steep mountain he couldn't climb. After 3 months of offering daily sacrifices for him, skipping her morning coffee, adding an extra hour of work without complaint, bearing a chronic pain without medication 1 day per week, she dreamed of him one final time. In this dream, he stood atop the mountain, radiant with joy, before disappearing into a brilliant light. Your sacrifices, Padre Pio explained, became steps that helped him climb that mountain to paradise. The first pillar of liberation for souls who appear in your dreams is consistent, heartfelt intercessory prayer, what Padre Pio called the daily bread of purgatory. This pillar is built upon understanding that your prayers create tangible spiritual effects for the suffering soul. When you kneel before bed or rise early to offer prayers specifically for someone who has appeared in your dreams, you are engaged in a spiritual work of mercy that transcends physical limitations. Padre Pio taught that these prayers should be specific rather than generic, addressing the soul by name and expressing your loving desire for their complete purification and entrance into paradise. Speak to them, he advised, as you would have spoken to them in life, with familiarity and affection. This personal connection amplifies the efficacy of your prayers. The practical application of this pillar involves selecting prayer times that you can maintain without fail, perhaps the first 5 minutes after waking or the last 10 minutes before sleeping. During these times, focus your entire attention on the soul who has reached out to you, visualizing them surrounded by the light of God's mercy as you pray. Many of Padre Pio's followers reported that maintaining this discipline for at least 30 consecutive days often resulted in a final dream visitation, one characterized by joy and gratitude rather than sorrow, signaling the soul's liberation. The second pillar centers on the transformative power of having masses offered for the specific intention of helping the soul who has appeared in your dreams. Padre Pio considered the Mass the greatest prayer of intercession possible, explaining that during the consecration, heaven and earth are united in a unique way that particularly benefits souls in purgatory. He encouraged the faithful to not simply attend Mass with this intention in mind, but to arrange for Masses to be said explicitly for the departed soul, a practice he considered so important that he would often say, "One Mass before death may be more profitable than many after." The tangible application of this pillar involves visiting your parish office to schedule Mass intentions for the soul who has reached out to you through dreams. Padre Pio recommended having at least 3 Masses said, one in honor of Christ's Passion, one in honor of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and one in honor of Saint Joseph, whom he called the patron of the dying and the deceased. While arranging these Masses may require a small offering to the Church, Padre Pio assured his spiritual children that this sacrifice carried immense spiritual value, teaching that the coin that pays for a Mass shines more brightly in heaven than the sun itself. The third pillar of liberation involves what Padre Pio termed spiritual almsgiving, performing works of charity and mercy in the name of the soul who has appeared to you. This practice extends the spiritual benefits of your good deeds to the soul in purgatory, hastening their purification process. When you clothe the naked, visit the sick, or feed the hungry in the name of a departed soul, Padre Pio explained, you are providing a spiritual garment, comfort, and nourishment to that soul in purgatory. The practical application of this pillar requires identifying concrete acts of charity you can perform, perhaps volunteering at a local shelter, visiting a nursing home, or providing meals to a struggling family, while consciously dedicating the spiritual merit of these actions to the specific soul who has reached out through your dreams. Padre Pio particularly recommended acts of mercy that address the potential shortcomings of the departed during their earthly life. For instance, if the person was known for impatience, perform acts requiring great patience and offer the merit to them. If they struggled with generosity, commit to extraordinary acts of giving in their name. This spiritually poetic form of restoration creates what Padre Pio described as a completion of their unfinished spiritual business, allowing them to advance more quickly through their purification. The optimal time for prayer on behalf of souls in purgatory, according to Padre Pio's teachings, is during what he called the sacred hour, the time between 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock a.m. This hour, which marks the deepest part of night before dawn begins to break, holds special significance in the spiritual realm. Padre Pio explained that Christ's death at the 9th hour, 3 o'clock p.m., makes the corresponding hour of 3 o'clock a.m. particularly powerful for prayers of liberation. During this hour, he taught, the veil between worlds is at its thinnest, and prayers offered then penetrate more deeply into purgatory. While maintaining a full hour of prayer might be challenging for many, Padre Pio suggested that even waking briefly during this time to offer a short but intense prayer for the soul who has appeared in your dreams can have remarkable effects. Many of his followers set alarms for this purpose, committing to a practice he called the midnight watch, a brief but focused spiritual intervention during the hour when both heaven and purgatory are most receptive to intercessory prayer. The specific prayer form that Padre Pio most strongly recommended during these pre-dawn intercessions was the Chaplet of Divine Mercy, a devotion revealed to Saint Faustina that focuses explicitly on God's limitless mercy for souls. Though this devotion became widely known after much of Padre Pio's ministry, he recognized its singular power for helping souls in purgatory, and often prescribed it to those who reported dream visitations from the departed. This prayer, he explained, directly appeals to the mercy that flows from Christ's sacrifice, which is the very key that unlocks the gates of purgatory. The simplicity of this chaplet, which can be completed in about 7 minutes, makes it ideal for middle-of-the-night prayer. Padre Pio suggested keeping a rosary by your bedside specifically for this purpose, so that upon waking, whether naturally or by alarm during the sacred hour, you could immediately begin this powerful intercession. Countless testimonies from his spiritual children attest to the effectiveness of this practice, with many reporting that after a faithful period of midnight intercession, they experienced a final dream of their departed loved one, radiant, joyful, and explicitly communicating their liberation from suffering. This commitment to interrupted sleep for the sake of a suffering soul constitutes what Padre Pio called a living sacrifice of comfort, a tangible offering that carries immense spiritual weight. He explained that willingly disturbing your own rest to pray for another represents a particularly meaningful sacrifice in our comfort-oriented world. When you surrender your own comfort for the comfort of a soul in purgatory, he taught, you participate directly in Christ's redemptive sacrifice. This teaching reveals the profound spiritual mathematics at work. Your temporary discomfort translates into eternal relief for the soul reaching out to you through dreams. For those who find the middle of the night schedule impossible due to health concerns or other legitimate reasons, Padre Pio offered an alternative, setting aside the first 15 minutes after waking or the last 15 minutes before sleeping as a sacred time dedicated exclusively to the soul in need. However, he emphasized that whenever possible, the pre-dawn intercession carries special efficacy, explaining that prayers offered when the body most craves rest are prayers that speak loudest in heaven. This understanding transforms what might seem like an inconvenience into a privileged opportunity to participate in the liberation of a soul. Among Padre Pio's most comforting teachings regarding souls in purgatory is what he called the principle of spiritual reciprocity. The assurance that souls helped through your prayers become powerful intercessors on your behalf once they reach heaven. When you help a soul cross the threshold into paradise, he would often tell his spiritual children, you gain an eternal friend before the throne of God. This divine economy means that every prayer you offer for a soul who appears in your dreams is ultimately an investment in your own spiritual welfare. Padre Pio shared numerous accounts of people who, after faithfully praying for a departed soul who had appeared in their dreams, suddenly found themselves receiving unexpected graces, overcoming persistent spiritual obstacles, or experiencing profound peace during difficulties. When questioned about these seeming coincidences, the mystic saint would smile knowingly and say, there are no coincidences in God's kingdom, only the grateful intercession of souls you have helped liberate. This understanding transforms your response to dream visitations from a burden into a blessed opportunity to forge a powerful spiritual alliance that transcends the boundaries of death itself. The specific blessings that flow back to those who help liberate souls from purgatory tend to correspond to the particular virtues the assisted soul is now perfecting in heaven. Padre Pio explained that each soul, upon entering paradise, receives a unique spiritual charism based on their earthly life and purification journey. When that soul intercedes for you, their prayers carry the special efficacy of this charism. For instance, if you helped liberate the soul of someone who struggled with illness in life, their heavenly prayers for your health would carry particular power. If you prayed for someone who battled against anger during their earthly journey, their intercession regarding your emotional challenges would be especially effective. This spiritual principle explains why many of Padre Pio's followers reported receiving help in very specific areas of their lives after praying for particular souls who had appeared in their dreams. One woman who faithfully prayed for her short-tempered father after his dream visitations suddenly found herself equipped with extraordinary patience during a difficult work situation. Your father, Padre Pio explained when she shared this experience, having been perfected in the virtue he lacked on earth, now obtains that same grace for you in abundance. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of this spiritual reciprocity is its manifestation in what Padre Pio termed dream confirmations, the appearance of the same soul in a final dream, but transformed, often explicitly communicating their gratitude and promising their intercession. These confirmatory dreams differ markedly from the initial visitations. Instead of the sorrowful countenance or silent pleading that characterized the earlier dreams, the soul now appears radiant, speaking freely, often surrounded by light, or in a clearly heavenly setting. Padre Pio taught his spiritual children to recognize these transformed appearances as authentic spiritual communications rather than mere psychological projections. The soul is showing you not only their gratitude, he would explain, but also their new reality. These confirmatory dreams serve a dual purpose. They reassure you that your prayers have been effective, and they establish a conscious, ongoing spiritual relationship between you and the soul you have helped. Many of Padre Pio's followers reported that after such a confirmatory dream, They developed the habit of specifically invoking the intercession of that soul during times of difficulty, creating what the saint described as a circle of spiritual assistance that flows from heaven to earth and back again. This ongoing relationship extends the impact of your initial response to the dream visitation into an eternal spiritual bond. Not all dreams of the departed carry the spiritual significance outlined by Padre Pio, a critical discernment he emphasized repeatedly to protect the faithful from potential spiritual deception. The enemy of souls, he cautioned, can disguise himself even as an angel of light, and certainly as a departed loved one. To help his spiritual children distinguish authentic visitations from potentially harmful spiritual counterfeits, Padre Pio identified specific warning signs that should prompt immediate spiritual caution and consultation with a trusted spiritual advisor. Primary among these warning signs is any dream in which the departed soul encourages actions contrary to faith or morality, suggesting practices involving divination, requesting secrecy about morally questionable behaviors, or urging you to abandon prayer or sacramental life. Equally concerning are dreams in which the supposed departed loved one creates unreasonable fear or anxiety, makes predictions about specific future events, particularly doomsday scenarios, or requests unusual objects to be placed in specific locations. Padre Pio was emphatic that authentic souls from purgatory never engage in such behaviors. Their communications are solely focused on requesting prayer and spiritual assistance. Another critical area of discernment involves the emotional and spiritual aftermath of these dreams. Authentic visitations from souls in purgatory, while potentially unsettling due to their urgent nature, ultimately lead to positive spiritual fruits in the dreamer's life. Padre Pio taught that legitimate dream encounters with the departed typically inspire increased prayer, deeper faith, greater charity toward others, and a more serious approach to one's spiritual life. Conversely, dreams that leave you with lingering dread, paralyzing fear, obsessive thoughts about death, withdrawal from community, or a sense of spiritual oppression likely have a different origin. The communications from purgatory, Padre Pio explained, may initially disturb your comfort, but they will never disturb your peace. This subtle but crucial distinction helps the faithful navigate the complex spiritual territory of dream visitations. When a dream of a departed loved one produces lasting spiritual disorientation, rather than a clarified sense of purpose and compassion, Padre Pio advised an immediate spiritual response: confession, increased reception of the Eucharist, and explicit prayers for protection and discernment. The most reliable safeguard against spiritual deception in this realm, according to Padre Pio, is maintaining what he called the 3 anchors of spiritual safety: regular confession, frequent communion, and consistent devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary. These practices create a spiritual environment in which legitimate communications from purgatory can be received clearly, while deceptive influences are kept at bay. The soul that remains close to these 3 anchors, he assured his followers, will never be led astray by false visitations. Padre Pio particularly emphasized the protective power of Marian devotion, noting that the enemy cannot long maintain a deception in the presence of genuine devotion to the Mother of God. For those experiencing dreams of departed loved ones, he recommended adding a daily rosary dedicated specifically to accurate spiritual discernment, with a particular focus on the joyful mysteries, which he described as especially illuminating to the mind confused by spiritual matters. Countless spiritual children followed this advice and reported gaining remarkable clarity about their dream experiences, often discovering that what initially seemed like a visitation from purgatory was revealed through prayer to be something quite different, or conversely, having their intuitive sense of a dream's authenticity confirmed through this devoted practice of discernment. The spiritual work you undertake on behalf of souls who appear in your dreams establishes what Padre Pio called an eternal covenant of prayer, a sacred bond that transcends death and continues to bear fruit long after the soul has been liberated from purgatory. This covenant operates on a profound spiritual principle that Padre Pio often expressed: in the economy of salvation, nothing is ever wasted. Every prayer, sacrifice, and mass offered for a soul in purgatory, even after that soul has reached heaven, is redirected by divine wisdom to other souls still in need of purification. Prayer is never lost in God's kingdom, the saint would explain to those who worried their continued prayers might be superfluous if the soul had already been released. If the soul for whom you pray has already entered paradise, Your prayers are applied to other souls according to God's perfect knowledge of need. This understanding liberates you from concerns about wasting spiritual efforts and encourages a generous approach to prayer for the dead. Many of Padre Pio's spiritual children adopted the practice of continuing their prayers for a soul even after receiving dream confirmation of that soul's liberation, understanding that these prayers were being perfectly applied within the divine economy of salvation. The culmination of this eternal covenant manifests in what Padre Pio described as the communion of intercessors, a spiritual reality in which souls you have helped liberate join their prayers with yours for others still in purgatory. This creates an ever-expanding circle of spiritual assistance that grows more powerful with each soul that enters heaven. The saint often used the metaphor of compound interest to explain this spiritual phenomenon. Each soul released through your prayers becomes another intercessor joined to your cause, multiplying the effectiveness of every subsequent prayer you offer. This understanding transformed many of his followers' approach to praying for the dead, from seeing it as an obligation or burden to recognizing it as a spiritually strategic investment that compounds in effectiveness over time. One of his spiritual daughters, after faithfully responding to dream visitations from 3 different family members over several years, reported a remarkable dream in which all 3 appeared together, surrounded by light, telling her they were now united in praying for yet another family member who had recently died. This, Padre Pio explained when she shared the dream, is the communion of intercessors at work. Your faithfulness has created a spiritual team that now works together for souls still in need of liberation. The practical application of these teachings in your daily life requires what Padre Pio called spiritual remembrance, the intentional incorporation of prayer for the dead into the rhythm of your days. Beyond responding to specific dream visitations, he encouraged the faithful to develop habitual practices that maintain awareness of our ongoing relationship with souls in purgatory. Simple acts like pausing briefly at noon each day to pray for the dead, keeping a small book of remembrance with the names of deceased loved ones, or offering the final decade of your daily rosary for souls in purgatory, create what Padre Pio described as spiritual tributaries that continuously flow toward those in need of purification. Perhaps most importantly, he taught that maintaining these practices of remembrance prepares your own soul for its eventual journey. Those who remember the dead in prayer, he often said, will themselves be remembered when their time comes. As you respond faithfully to the dream visitations that have prompted this spiritual journey, remember that you are not only helping individual souls, but participating in an eternal spiritual dynamic that will eventually embrace your own soul as well. The covenant of prayer you establish now, through your faithful response to those midnight visitors who appear in your dreams, creates a legacy of intercession that will outlast your earthly life and bear fruit into eternity.